Excited about Star Trek Picard? So are we. So much so, we've gathered a handful of new details about the show that you don't want to miss, including the fact this might not be Data, or at least how we think of him. Let's jump into it. Hi everyone, my name is Captain Jack and welcome to Trek Central. From a number of interviews following Star Trek's Comic-Con panel, we've recently learned quite a few new interesting details about the upcoming show, Star Trek Picard. We'll be breaking those interviews down for you to let you know what we might expect when Picard finally returns to our screens in early 2020.
Engage.
So let's talk about one of the big reveals in the Picard series trailer, that being a Brent Spiner returning as Data. This appearance certainly has got the Star Trek fandom talking, with many speculating that the character on screen might not be the legendary Lieutenant Commander Data, but instead his brother B4, or even Lore. Putting speculation aside for just one moment, Brent Spiner, who plays Data, did confirm some details for us. During an interview with TV Line, Spiner mentioned that the android B4 is the one we see in the drawer during the shot in the trailer, eliminating the theory that this might be Data's body recovered from the Battle of the Basin Rift in the year 2379, even though that would be near shy impossible, as his body would have been vaporized. To go back to speculation for a moment, based on some of the other hints that Brent Spiner has mentioned across multiple interviews, the Data we see at the end of the trailer might be a holodeck recreation. Key facts play into this. Picard states in the trailer, "I don't want the game to end," suggesting that this is a simulation of some sort and not just about the card game they are playing. The character of Data responds by saying, "I can see that, Captain." Given a response of "Captain" suggests that it's either a flashback scene or a holodeck recreation of the Lieutenant Commander Data before he was killed in the events of Star Trek Nemesis. Picard's rank is actually that of a former admiral, not a captain. We also learned that Brent Spiner will make appearances as Data on the show, but will not be in every episode, mentioning, and I quote, "What you think may be what happens is not what happens." Kinda cryptic. It sounds interesting for sure. We're certainly going to have to keep our eyes open around details on Data. What do you think of this reappearance? Is it a holodeck, a flashback, or something else? Let us know in the comments.
I don't want the game to end.
Now for some additional information on the Picard series. As mentioned, we've gathered a few things from several different interviews to save you time. Here we go. It's been confirmed that composer Jeff Russo, known for his work on the soundtrack of Star Trek Discovery Season 1 and 2, is now on board and confirmed to compose the music for Star Trek Picard. The soundtrack for Discovery Season 2 has just been released and is definitely worth a listen. Russo has shown a great respect for existing Trek musical themes and yet applies a fresh view with his music. This should mean that we get a solid theme for Picard and perhaps some of his castmates. Via one of the Comic-Con interviews, we received confirmation that Picard will be taking place in the year 2399. 20 years after the events of Star Trek Nemesis. Sir Patrick Stewart remarks on this by saying it's actually been nearly 20 years since the release of Nemesis, so the experience they've had in that time can feed into their performances in the show, which should lead to some excellent acting from the original cast. Speaking of original cast, we know that Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis are returning as their respected characters, but will more Star Trek icons join them? We sure do hope so. Details on how seasons of Star Trek Picard will work were mentioned. It looks like the first season of Picard has a set, serialized story to tell, but that doesn't mean it will be the only season. Yes, you heard me correct. During many of the interviews, Patrick himself said he would be on board for more seasons if there was a good story being told and that the fans enjoyed it. This would not only mean more Picard, but it was hinted at that they would be looking at bringing some more original Star Trek cast back for ways that fit the story. And not only the Next Generation cast, but cast from other shows being Voyager and Deep Space Nine, etc. One of the Picard writers, Kirsten Beer, has written several Voyager novels, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see more Voyager cast popping up, even a certain Admiral.
Jean-Luc, how'd you like a trip to Romulus?
Blink and you might miss it. Yes, the Borg are back in Star Trek Picard. To accompany their mysterious return, a familiar face joins them. Actor Jonathan Del Arco, who originally played Hugh in Star Trek The Next Generation, is returning to play the character once again, stating that Hugh is now the leader of the Free Borg. In an interview, Del Arco confirms that Hugh is now a more developed human version of himself, building on what we last saw in the Next Generation episode Descent Part 2. Showing another interview quote on screen, Jonathan mentioned that Hugh is still a Borg, but strongly caring for those around him. It seems that Hugh's character is going to be a key focus of Star Trek Picard, so we need to keep our eyes open for details on this character. Now, what if I told you that we might not have had a Star Trek Picard series and that the series lead, Sir Patrick Stewart, did not originally want to return as Jean-Luc Picard? You might already know this story, or you might now be surprised. Here we go. Now, the first thing a lot of us are thinking when we hear about Picard will return to our screens is, Why has it taken 17 years to do so? Obviously, the reason for why this is because Sir Patrick Stewart said yes to reprising the role, but there was an underlying story that is very interesting, and which gets us excited about the story of Star Trek Picard. I'm going to tell you why. The intentions of the creative team is what got Picard back for us. Sir Patrick met with franchise boss Alex Kurtzman, executive producer Akiva Goldsman, and writer Kirsten Beer in 2017, who wanted to explain their bold new idea for the character of Jean-Luc Picard. Now here is the interesting part. Patrick Stewart took the meeting with the team with the intention of turning them down, as he'd felt the Star Trek part of his life had ended. After Sir Patrick had explained why he was going to pass on the offer, the creative team decided to tell him the story they were planning to tell. Stewart was intrigued by the idea and asked the team to write him a document outlining the full plan. Eventually the team returned to him with a 34-page document, which was surprising. Coming around to March 2018, Stewart approved their pitch. He was still on the fence about joining the project at that exact time, but asked Alex Kurtzman for the series of Picard to be so different from the previous Star Trek stories that had been told, quoted as saying, "Both what people remember, but also not what they're expecting at all. Otherwise, why do it?" Personally, I believe Sir Patrick has hit the nail on the head here. If we're just going to do a rehash of Star Trek The Next Generation, it might not be that much interesting, so at least we're going to get a fresh POV on the Star Trek universe. Now eventually on August 4th, 2018, Star Trek Las Vegas came around, with Stewart making a surprise appearance on stage announcing the return of everyone's favourite captain, but informing the excited crowd that Jean-Luc would be very different.
Jean-Luc Picard is back.
Fun fact, it's almost been a year since that announcement now, with Star Trek Las Vegas 2019 coming up very soon. Will we see more Picard news? Stay tuned. This very character-focused aspect of Picard is what interests a lot of us here at Trek Central, as we should be able to see the relatable human aspects in this sci-fi story. An aspect which makes Trek what it is, but going even further than Trek has seen in the past. That's all I have on Picard returning for the moment, but I expect we're going to get more details as the year goes on. Now, we didn't learn much about the story from any of the interviews, they're keeping that under close wraps for obvious reasons. However, we did find out a couple of cool details. We know there'll be many different locations seen in the show, as well as different aliens, so hopefully you won't be only seeing humans and Romulans. Fun fact, you can sort of see an Andorian in this shot of the Picard trailer. You can make out the blue skin there. There will also be a lot more shades of grey than we've seen in previous shows. They have danced that line before in Star Trek history, specifically in the later seasons of Deep Space Nine, with episodes such as In the Pale Moonlight, but this iteration of Trek will be full of grey and imperfect people. This would be a pro and a con for different people, but hopefully it's done in a nice way that delivers a good and authentic story. It seems to have much more action consistently than other previous shows, which you can definitely see from a trailer. Whether this also means space battles, we have no idea, as they wouldn't tell us much on the ship Picard and his motley crew embark on. Speaking of Picard's new crew, a small detail I will share is that they're described as a crew of renegades. Sir Patrick himself commented, "It's only a crew in a sense. You must not think of it as a crew like the Enterprise. We are not Starfleet, we are in a sense of renegades. We are acting independently. Chris Rios is the captain." Of course, we know that actor Santiago Cabrera is playing ex-Starfleet and pilot of the ship Cristobal Chris Rios. There are more details on the new crew of the Star Trek Picard series, but we'll be making a separate video talking about them in full detail, so stay tuned for that one. So if we are going to get more seasons of Picard, which former Trek cast would you like to see return? The return of John Delancey as a Magnificent Q, Captain Ezri Dax of the USS Aberdeen, or someone else? Simply let us know via the comment section on this video. That's all from us on Trek Central. Remember, if you want to keep up to date with the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, simply subscribe. You can follow us on social media like Twitter and Facebook, and you can even join our very own Discord server to discuss all things Trek. I've been Captain Jack, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.